Hey guys, welcome back. This video, we talked about views last time. Now we're going to talk about how to create stored procedures and what is a stored procedure. So stored procedures are, well, they're procedures, but ultimately they are a mechanism, which is a programming language that allows you to create. A stored procedure is a programming language within itself. So take all the SQL that you create, and let's say that you have a table that you want to update, and let's say that you have a query that you want to run, and variables that you want to do this and you want to do that, and etc. There's a ton of different things that you want to do. Now, typically, what you would do is you write almost like something called an ETL package, and it's just ultimately all you're doing is writing SQL code, and you're running that. So every time you want to run that SQL code, you have to pull up your query window and run a list of all your different scripts. So for example, let's say that we're receiving a file, or let's say that we have a client that sends us a file and we do something with his file every day. So maybe the first thing that we do with his file is we receive the file. So we use pseudocode here, receive a file. And maybe the first step of that file is we need to, what's step one? Let's do this here. Let's do, well, always do it backwards, I think. Yeah, so we have this, lost my cursor. All right, so we have a file. So instructions. So we'll say receive a file, a daily file from a customer that needs massage, and add it to the repository. So let's say ultimately we have this remote repository, or this vault where all this data is stored at, and the customer goes out and uses our GUI that we created to run reports and so forth. But they receive a file of, say, all their transactions for the weekend, and they need it uploaded into the environment, and that's what we do. So ultimately we're going to have some series of steps. So let's say, I'm just making this up. Step one is to scan the document, the doc, we'll say a text file, for any inappropriate findings. Well, we'll say inappropriate characters per table, per field / table. What that means is, let's say that we have a table, and this table, or a column within a table, and the column is only able to receive numbers, and let's say that they provided text in there. So what we're going to do is scan, and it's called a data cleanse. We're going to scan and evaluate all these fields and make sure that they are the proper things. So what we could do is we can actually, I'm not teaching you how to do this, is you could query each column in the table and define. What you could do is you could identify if that field is a, say you're trying to identify if it's a number. So if it's a number, it'll give you back a return of either a 0 or 1. 0 meaning that it's false, or 1 meaning it's true. So there's a series of queries that you could run against each column, and you could provide like some type of algorithm report, and you can say, hey, if this, and that matches, then that would be step one, is identify. So it's scan the doc text file, inappropriate characters. We'll say identify data types. Okay, so that would be the first step of that. And then step two would be to replace the incorrect, let's see, probably in this case, thinking out loud, what you would do here is you would not replace, you would separate the bad data. And what I mean by that is you would create a, in this part right here, what you would do is you would create a temporary table and export this data, these columns, to that table. Okay, so that would be step 2. Step 3, now you think about step 3 is you have this table, existing table, well, we'll say it's temporary table, whatever, and now you got all the bad default stuff out of there. Now you have to go through and run other checks. So we'll just say run other checks. That is something specific, whatever that is. And then you might have a step 4, and then it does blah, blah, blah. I'm just making this up. And maybe step 5 is a final review. Okay. So you have all these steps. And then step 6 is to move the data from temporary, well, let's put it this way, temporary to the staging table. And maybe step 7 is to move the bad data results into the staging table. So now what you're doing is merging it. And then maybe step 8 is final review of all merged data. And then last step would be 9, and that is to export data into production table. Something like that. So you have all these steps, right? Now you could have all these queries and just come in here every time. But if you have a stored procedure, let's say our stored procedure is called SP. It could be a multiple things. We'll say there's this one. We'll say stage Rex from we'll say Steelers. We'll say from client Steelers, something like that. And so that, hey, we know that the record's coming from the Steelers, and that's going to be our stored procedure. So all we would have to do is highlight this and run it, and it would take all those steps for us. And then to top things off better, we can make it automated down the road where when the file comes in, we have a program that automatically detects this is Steelers, just send us a file, and then what happens is it kicks off this stored procedure, and it does everything for us automatically. And maybe we just get a text and says, hey, it worked. Or we get a notification, hey, it aired out on step 7, line 427, something like that. That is how you get things done. You don't want to have to commit yourself to manually logging in, highlighting it, executing it. That's a waste of time. You could be doing something else and you could utilize your time more wisely. And this picture I painted is real life. I did this. I've been in this chair. I was the guy that received the file, the $1 million file, literally, 2-3 million rows, and we have manual processes, and they would take me 4 hours to sit there and do that. So there was better ways, and we come up with better processes. So I've been doing this a long time. Anyways, so that is the beginning of it. So now let's actually get into creating a stored procedure. And in this lecture lab, will kind of continue into the following week. So if you're taking my database online course, how the modules work is module 6 is you're talking about views and stored procedures this week. Module 7, you're talking about stored procedures again, functions and triggers, but ultimately you'll get a lot of the stored procedures this week, and next week you'll just learn more about functions and triggers and so forth. You'll have a better understanding. All right, so let's go into, I'm using this, I got this data out here called breweries. I'm going to use that as my data. So if you see here, when you click on breweries, we have tables, we got stored procedures, we got functions. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click on stored procedure and create a stored procedure. I'm going to change this up to about 160 so you can see it. All right. So you'll put the name of your stored procedure. I like to start off with SP so I know it's a stored procedure and then what type of stored procedure it is. So one thing is if I click down here, it'll show all the stored procedures I have. So I just want to make sure. I'll say list all breweries. Okay. And this right here, this open close bracket, this is for if we want to add parameters. And so parameters could be used for inputting data and like filters. So let's say you want to use a where clause. That would be a good perfect example. Maybe you want to have an output value. You could use it for an output value. But if you don't put anything in there, when it gets called, that means that it's not doing any specific filtering. Okay. All right. So let's say select all from breweries. Let's just keep it simple. Don't make it complicated. Don't overcomplicate it. That's it. Now, I tell people before you do this, always make sure that your query is going to work. So if I come down here and select all breweries, I want to make sure I should also tell it where it's coming from. That might work. So it's coming from breweries. I know, not a good name for schema and all that at the same time. All right. All right, you see it's case sensitive. Perfect. It selects it, so it works. So I probably want to put that in my statement as well. So let's do there. Let's do it here. And I'll put use breweries. Name of the schema. All right, so then I'm gonna go ahead and click apply. Apply. Doesn't like it. Why does it not like it? Well, I have a feeling it has something to do with the use. And the reason being is the stored procedure is located under that schema. So you don't have to put the name of the schema, but I wanted to show you that. So I'm going to take that out and hit apply and apply. And it says it worked. All right, so I'm going to exit out of that. So now if I click the refresh button here, go to store procedures, I should have list all breweries right there. Now if I want to call it, you type in call sp list all breweries like that. Highlight it, run it, and it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? It doesn't exist. All right, so this is the case sensitive BS stuff. SP list all. Okay, that does exist. All right, I bet it's this. I bet anyway that's what it is. Okay, now I'm confused. It's very case sensitive, I'm telling you. Yeah, that's exactly what I have here, buddy. All right, this is crazy. Table breweries doesn't exist. Oh my god, it does exist. You're out of your mind. See, this right here is the same procedure. Sorry, I'm messing around with there because I'm confused why it's not working. All right, none of these are working. All right, what the heck? It's really not this difficult, I promise you. I don't know why. Let's copy this, create a new scene here real quick. All right, table brews, that brews doesn't exist. All right. All right. None of them are working. So let's again alter the procedure again. Maybe, you know why? Uppercase. I have uppercase instead of lowercase. It's very case sensitive. I don't like that. Let's change it so you see how to change the procedure. What I did is I just altered it. Now it should work, as I thought I was losing my mind for a moment there. So now let's run it. Wow. So that right there is up. MySQL is very case sensitive. I don't like that. I do not like that at all. But that did work. And at least you've seen how that you changed it. I just went in, altered it, made my change and fixed it. And that was it. So you see what I mean. If you had all these steps in a sort procedure, it makes it so much easier. All right. So now let's say that we want to make it more specific. Let's say that we wanted to go in here and put a where clause in here. So maybe we want to do, let me make this bigger, guys. Let's say that we want to do where, fucking type. Where, say, let's look at the data here. We'll say brewery name equals, and we'll do the brew house. The brew house, okay. So where brewery name equals the brew house. And what I'll do here to make sure it works, I'll copy it before I even do anything with it. And I'll make sure that the query works. And it does. Perfect. So we know that even if it's case sensitive, we got it right. We'll go ahead and hit apply. Ah, come on, Jeff. Let's put it like that. Very particular. I'm telling you, if you ever had a chance to use SQL Server, try it. You'll like it much better. It's not this difficult. Or it's this is very, I won't say complicated, it's just too picky for me. And there you go. It pulls up only that one record because we put a change in there. Let's make it a little bit different now. So, let's close out of here. And let's alter it. But now we're going to make it specific. Now we're going to add a parameter in here. So we're going to say maybe IN. So you have to type in the word IN for input. If you're doing an output, you put out. But we're not doing output. So we'll do input. And we'll say, I always say to put the name of the param, because you might put the name of the field that you're using, and it'll equal the same field in the table. You want to try to come up with a different name. So I'll say brewery name. So you want to put the name that you want to call it. Then you also, whatever field that you're going to be using. So in this case, I'm going to be saying where, I'm going to pass in a brewery name, and then we're going to say where the brewery name equals the parameter. So that's based off of what the user wants. So in order to do that, I need to identify the column, the default value. So if I go to brewery name, I see that it's a varchar 75. So I want to make sure I do the same thing. So I'll put varchar 75, just like that. So that way I provide the same value of what it is. So let's say, for example, it was a varchar 5. And I put a varchar 3 in there. Guess what happens? When I call the store procedure and pass in 5 characters, it's going to get truncated off, and it's only going to show me 3, and it's not going to work. So that's why you want to make sure that you provide the exact number. So that's it. Well, then we have to change this around here. We have to say where the brewery name equals, and you're going to put param brewery name. Just like that. So it's going to take whatever that value is here, and it's automatically going to put ticks around it and look for that one right there. So let's do that. Apply it. Boom. And now, let's run this query because it's going to help, because we want to see what other ones are out there, because we don't want to run the same one. All right, let's do this one. Copy. I don't know if that'll give me what I want. Yeah. All right, so now we'll call the same thing, and then in here we'll pass in the value. You want to make sure it's in ticks like that, and then so you want to do it this way. You want to put in parentheses. Sorry. Yeah, so that you can put in your value. So let's call it, and there you go. So it found the brewery name and did the query right, and provided us the type, the address. This is very small. All this data right here that we're looking at is providing us all that data, and that's good. So it did work. That is how you do that. And then let's say that you wanted to break it down by state. Let's say that the state had 5 breweries in it, or 50, maybe 20 breweries, and then you want to break it down by city. You're like, oh, that city has 4 breweries, etc. You could do all that. So there's not a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do with sort procedures, but for the most part, that's the beginning. Let's see here. What else can I show you? You could do update statements as well. So let's do an update procedure. So let's say, let's keep the same query. Well, we don't want to create, because we're going to create a different query. So let's do this update credit procedure. We will call it SP for store procedure, and we'll say update. Let's see what we want to update. Let's see what we got here. Well, we have microbrewery type, maybe addressed. All right, so maybe address would be a good one that we can update. See, this one's difficult, and I'll say why. Let's see if there's an order by here. You might not want to update by brewery name. So let's say you have multiple. What the hell happened? And order by brewery name. I'm not sure why that didn't work. Okay, that's weird. Hold on, what the hell? Alright, it's like it didn't even recognize it. I don't get that one. Anyways, let's say that you have multiple brewery names with the same name. You don't want to update because you might have multiple locations. So you want to have a specific ID. So in this case, we're going to use the brew ID value. And how this works is, if you're using an interface and someone goes to click on and make an update to it, it's going to automatically grab that ID of that value, and then it'll pass an ID. So that's the right way. So we want to pass an ID of what we want to update, and then we can change the address, if that makes sense. So we'll say update brewery locations. And then all we have to do down here is, well, we have to do a parameter. So we'll say input, and we'll say param. In this case right here, we want to do the brewery ID, which is an integer. So we'll say param brew ID, and we'll type in int for integer. That's all we want to, that's one part we want to change. The second thing is we want to change the address. So we'll type it in, and then we're going to do address, I'm going to do param address, and we're going to do varchar 255. Where I get 255, that's what it says right there. And then we can come in here and say update the name of the table, which is breweries. Update breweries, and then we'll say set address equals param address, whatever the new address is, where, and then we can take this ID right here, ID breweries, we say ID breweries equals the value that we pass in here, param brew ID. That's it. So it's going to say update the brewery table. It's going to set the address to equal the new address that we pass in, and then where the ID breweries, this value equals param brewery that we pass in. So in retrospect, let's say that we came on here, select breweries, and say that we said where ID breweries equals 23. What are we going to get? We're pulling the value for number 23, which is this guy right here in California. Okay, so copy filled. That's the value it gives us. So we're going to change that around a little bit. All right, so that's it. That's all you have to do. Okay, so I'm going to hit apply, execute, boom. We know that we have to call the ID and the address. So we know that that's the address right there. So let's do this. We'll do call procedure. We'll pass in an ID, which the ID is 23, comma, and then we'll pass in a new address, which we'll put 300 Melrose Place, and we'll put Beverly Hills, California, 90210. And you put a tick in there, and then you put that in there. So when we run this query right here, next time, the address should be something different. So we call this procedure right here. It says that it was successful. One row was updated. So let's see if it worked. Run the query. And look at that. Melrose Place, Beverly Hills. That's how you do an update. That's the right way of doing an update. Don't try to do the update by the brewery name, because it could be very hairy and mess up. Okay. So for this week, this is just a small introduction to store procedures. We'll get in a little bit more depth next week. But I just want to provide you a little idea of how to do some procedures so that you can really get down to the nitty gritty. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.